Yom Kippur War, 1973, the Ramadan War that shook the Middle East. Hello everyone, welcome back to our history channel that always explores the world's greatest wars in detail, based on trusted and accurate sources. Today, we're diving into one of the most dramatic conflicts of the 20th century, the Yom Kippur War of 1973, also known as the Ramadan War, or the October War. This war took place from October 6th to October 26th, 1973, pitting Israel against a coalition of Arab states led by Egypt and Syria. It was not only a military showdown, but also a turning point in Middle Eastern politics, a flashpoint in the Cold War, and the trigger for a global oil crisis that reshaped the modern world. Background: the wounds of the Six-Day War. To understand why this war erupted, we need to go back to 1967, when the Six-Day War broke out. In that brave conflict, Israel launched preemptive strikes and destroyed the Egyptian Air Force in a single morning, then swiftly captured huge swaths of territory: the Golan Heights from Syria, the West Bank and East Jerusalem from Jordan, and the Sinai Peninsula and Gaza Strip from Egypt. For the Arab world, it was a humiliation. Thousands of soldiers were lost, capitals were shaken, and pride was shattered. Egyptians and Syrians were determined to avenge this humiliation and restore their national honor. For Anwar Sadat, the Sinai Peninsula had to be retaken, not only as a matter of strategy, but also as a symbol of Egypt's dignity. For Hafez al-Assad, the goal was to recapture the Golan Heights, a critical military high ground. The surprise attack, October 6, 1973. The timing of the Arab offensive was meticulously chosen. October 6th was Yom Kippur, the holiest day in Judaism. Israel nearly came to a standstill. Many soldiers were on leave, and the country was at its most vulnerable. At the same time, Muslims were observing Ramadan, which gave the war its alternative name, the Ramadan War. At 2 p.m., Egyptian artillery unleashed a massive barrage across the Suez Canal, followed by more than 80,000 Egyptian troops and 1,000 tanks crossing into the Sinai. Using high-pressure water cannons, Egyptian engineers blasted through the massive sand walls of Israel's Bar-Lev line, something many had thought impossible. Within hours, they had secured dozens of bridgeheads. Meanwhile, in the Golan Heights, 1,400 Syrian tanks surged forward against just 180 Israeli tanks holding the line. The odds were overwhelming, yet Israeli troops fought desperately to buy time.
Egypt's strategy, the air defense umbrella. Learning from the disasters of 1967, Egypt built its entire war plan around a surface-to-air missile shield supplied by the Soviet Union. Dozens of SAM batteries, including SA-2s, SA-3s, and SA-6s, along with mobile anti-aircraft guns, created a deadly umbrella over the battlefield. The strategy worked. The Israeli Air Force, long considered Israel's trump card, suddenly found itself vulnerable. Dozens of jets were shot down in the opening days. For the first time in its history, Israel could not achieve total air superiority. Israel on the brink. In the first week, Israel was in real danger. Egyptian forces held strong positions east of the Suez Canal, while Syrian tanks pushed deep into the Golan Heights, threatening northern Israel. Panic spread within the Israeli leadership. Prime Minister Golda Meir feared that Israel's very survival was at stake. The turning point: mobilization of reserves. Israel responded with a massive mobilization of its reserves. Civilians were pulled from holidays, jobs, and homes, and within days, tens of thousands of additional soldiers were on the front lines. In the Golan Heights, under General David El-Assar, Israeli forces fought some of the largest tank battles of the modern era. Outnumbered but determined, Israeli crews managed to halt and then push back the Syrian assault. In the Sinai, Israel identified a key flaw in Egypt's plan. The SAM umbrella extended only about 15 to 20 kilometers beyond the Suez Canal. Once Egyptian troops moved further east, they left the protective cover and became vulnerable to Israeli air attacks. Israel strikes back. With U.S. support flowing in through Operation Nickelgrass, Israel launched a daring counterattack. General Ariel Sharon led a bold maneuver across the Suez Canal. Exploiting a gap between Egyptian armies, Sharon's forces built pontoon bridges, crossed into the western side of the canal, and encircled Egypt's Third Army. In the Golan, Israeli forces not only repelled Syria, but advanced toward Damascus, coming within artillery range of the Syrian capital before international pressure halted them. A Cold War showdown. The Yom Kippur War quickly escalated beyond the Middle East. The Soviet Union, backing Egypt and Syria, supplied massive amounts of weapons and even threatened direct intervention. The United States, committed to Israel's survival, responded with its own massive airlift. At the peak of the crisis, the Soviet Union threatened to send troops to save Egypt's Third Army. In response, the United States raised its nuclear readiness to DEFCON 3, the highest level since the Cuban Missile Crisis. The world stood on the edge of a superpower confrontation. The global oil shock. The war's impact was not confined to the battlefield. Angered by Western support for Israel, Arab members of OPEC, led by Saudi Arabia's King Faisal, declared an oil embargo on the United States and its allies. Oil production was slashed, prices skyrocketed, and the 1973 oil crisis began. Western economies were thrown into recession, and global politics shifted permanently.
Casualties of the war. The human cost was devastating. Israel lost about 2,688 soldiers killed, 7,000 wounded, over 100 aircraft, and nearly 800 tanks. Egypt and Syria together lost an estimated 35,000 soldiers killed, more than 15,000 wounded, 8,000 captured, and hundreds of aircraft and tanks destroyed. The ceasefire. After 20 days of brutal combat, the United Nations Security Council passed Resolution 338 and Resolution 339, calling for a ceasefire. By October 26th, the guns fell silent. Militarily, Israel had regained the upper hand, but politically, the Arab states claimed a psychological victory. Egypt's initial success in crossing the Suez Canal restored pride and confidence across the Arab world. Aftermath and political consequences. The war reshaped Middle Eastern politics. In Israel, mass protests erupted over the government's unpreparedness. Prime Minister Golda Meir and Defense Minister Moshe Dayan resigned under public pressure. Israel then embarked on a program of self-sufficiency, developing its own tanks, aircraft, and advanced weapons. In Egypt, Sadat turned military failure into political opportunity. By demonstrating Egypt's capability, he gained leverage in diplomacy. This culminated in the 1978 Camp David Accords, where Israel agreed to withdraw from the Sinai in exchange for peace with Egypt. Sadat, Israeli Prime Minister Menachem Begin, and U.S. President Jimmy Carter shared the Nobel Peace Prize. However, peace came at a cost. In 1981, Anwar Sadat was assassinated by extremists opposed to the treaty with Israel. For Syria, the war ended in stalemate. The Golan Heights remained under Israeli control, and to this day, no peace treaty has been signed. Conclusion. The Yom Kippur War of 1973 was not just a regional conflict. It was a military surprise that nearly broke Israel, a morale booster for Egypt and the Arab world, a flashpoint of the Cold War that risked superpower confrontation, the spark for a global oil crisis that reshaped economies, and ultimately the stepping stone to the first Arab-Israeli peace treaty. It remains one of the defining wars of the modern Middle East, its lessons, scars, and consequences still felt today.